Hi, everyone. Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's Community Talk Show. I'm Wendy O'Connell. And yes, here we are again, back on Zoom. We are still here and we'll be here gratefully for as long as we need to during COVID phase 2. And so today, I'm really happy to have on this show Annie Guion. Annie is the executive director of the Windham County Humane Society, which is right here on the West River Road, also known as Route 30. It's been there for quite a number of years. Annie's love and connection to the natural world and being outdoors has led her to work with the Audubon Society, the National Park Service, Croca Expeditions, Meeting Waters YMCA, among others. Contra dancing feeds her endorphins, and singing with various local groups, including the Hallowell Hospice Singers, feeds her soul. Welcome today, Annie, to Here We Are. We are so glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having me on, Wendy.
Yes, I know you have a busy schedule, and I know you're a busy person. And one thing that struck me was I've had various executive directors come on the show. And one thing that each of them has said, and you actually said this to me the other day, is that you are very happy to be in a situation where you have to troubleshoot, where you have to use creative thinking to meet the different challenges that come up.
That's true. Every day is different. There is no set pattern, and it's everything from trying to figure out why the IRS has decided you don't owe any taxes this back quarter to how we're going to deal with an animal that just came in that has a major health or behavior issue.
Right. Yes. And that's all those things are happening every day. Plus you have staff and we'll get into that in a few minutes. The myriad points of being the executive director of the Humane Society. You are dealing with wild animals of one kind or another, right?
Well, we try to stick to domesticated, but sometimes they're pretty wild.
And you've had quite a route to the Humane Society, and it's so interesting because so many of the things that you did, as I mentioned, have to do with the natural world. And one of the things that you did talk about is how your focus has been on how we treat the planet and how we treat living things on the planet.
Yeah, it might not have seemed like a logical step to go from environmental education to animal welfare, but the thread is very strong. I feel like the way we treat our air and our water and then the sentient beings that we share the planet with, it all goes hand in hand with how we're doing. And what an interesting time right now, because, frankly, the coronavirus has a lot to do with bad animal welfare practices.
For a variety of reasons, I would think as well. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, as best we know, it came out of a market where they are stacking wild and domestic animals of all sorts. So you've got a whole lot of animals, multiple species, in a very stressful situation, in very poor hygienic situation, with all kinds of fluids running through. And that's just a prime breeding ground for viruses, which are very smart. Whether you consider them sentient or not, we don't really know. Viruses exist as this whole little part of our natural world that we don't fully understand. So, but that is, you might as well design a breeding ground for viruses just like that. So, one of the silver linings of this whole thing is both that kind of industry, the meat industry and the fur industry. We have to re-examine all those things right now.
And how have you done that at the Humane Society?
Well, we're a little less deep into that in that, we're dealing really at our little shelter, we're mostly dealing with family pets. Mm-hmm. So it's not the kind of broad ground that created the coronavirus. But I will say it's been interesting with my staff to be very clear. We have no doubters. No, is this thing real? Oh, I'm not going to wear a mask. We give vaccines to pets every day. I mean, we don't have rabies as a real problem in this country anymore because of rabies vaccines. So we're all on board with the science. So that all ties into what we do at the shelter, and we all feel really confident about following the science.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And one of the things, and I thought we were going to get into this later on, but let's just go with this conversation because it's really interesting. I think that having pets has changed so much over the years. I think the last 10 years, people with pets has shifted. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, why that is, where that came from, and where the animals are coming from as well.
Yeah, okay, so this is really fascinating. I don't know how many people know, but back when the first ASPCAs were founded, and they were driven by the New York City one, which was founded to protect horses. If you think back then, the city was filled with horses, pulling carriages, and they were often very poorly treated. But early on, the measure of success for those humane societies were how many animals they could kill, because there were lots of free roaming dogs with rabies and cats all over the city. So the real measure was, could you keep those populations down, stop the spread of disease? And that's really where our humane societies got started.
Oh, interesting.
So we've come a long, long way from that. And then I think another real hallmark, and again, I've only been in animal welfare since 2008, which isn't that long. Some people have been doing it, their whole careers. But in 2005, Katrina hit. And while it didn't change people's attitudes towards pets, but it was the first time really in a big natural disaster that everybody going in to rescue people were stunned by how many people would not leave their homes. They would not leave imminent danger unless the people took their pets with them. And that actually led to changes in federal law. And our shelter, other shelters, they all went south to try to save homeless animals that had been displaced by all the flooding. And that was really a landmark change. Other landmark changes were San Francisco, I believe it was the city of San Francisco, got a very progressive leader who said, you know what, we're not going to be the city pound anymore because we want to stop killing animals. So the city's going to have to take a different approach. We're going to start trying to save every life we can. And then we also, another huge shift was to look at cats and how we treat cats coming into shelters, because we used to take everything, including the community cats, which, as we started out talking about wild versus domesticated, a truly feral cat is more like a raccoon than a domestic pet. And to keep it in a cage is cruel and torture. And this is another place where the intersection of working for Connecticut Audubon and working for animal welfare is really interesting, because I love songbirds. But the science says that if you just go in and try to kill every feral cat you find, it's not going to work. It creates vacuums that more feral cats move into. If, however, you manage feral cat populations and keep their colonies low and keep them spayed neutered, they roam less, they fight less, they don't spread disease, and they tend to stay right where they are, and they're going to kill a lot fewer birds and wildlife. In a perfect world, we'd say no more cats outside, but we're pretty far from a perfect world.
Well, that's a really big overview, to be able to realize, once again, the interconnection of all life on the planet, right? And how if one population is, like when we brought the fisher cats down from Canada, right, to take care of the porcupines, now all of a sudden. So yes, and that we can look at a million different examples of that. And so you, right here, right in town, grassroots, you are dealing with those issues.
Yes, and we do free spay neuter for the lovely people in town that manage feral colonies. It keeps them small. We have a small colony on the railroad tracks behind downtown. And those cats, actually, they live a decent life, and they keep the mice and rodent population down there. There are real benefits to having a well-managed small feral cat community. And while, again, I see a perfect world where we don't have free roaming cats killing wildlife, but there's a bridge to get there. And then my naturalist side has to step in and say, Wendy, they're fishers, not fisher cats.
Oh, thank you.
They're a member of the weasel family. They are not felines, and they were here originally. So they were extirpated from this area. But
Thank you for the correction. And I think many of us are corrected with that sentence. Thank you, Annie. And so again, sticking with the Humane Society a little longer, one thing I loved, and you spoke to this immediately, was that this Humane Society was founded in 1887. Now, do you think at that time they were like at the retreat that had a lot of horses, and there were many horses in town being used for various things?
Well, it was founded by Jenny Powers, who also founded Monadnock. They have a really great, one of their new murals is of Jenny. And I know, yes, she was a staunch advocate of taking better care of horses. Mm-hmm. I'd heard rumors that she was a veterinarian. I have not been able to prove that. It would have been unusual for a woman in that era. Mm-hmm. I think she largely was focused on horses, but cats and dogs. And she also did a lot for the welfare of children.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which again, all tied together, right? There's a very good data that when there's domestic abuse, there's animal abuse and vice versa. So if you're seeing animals being abused, you can make a good guess that the children are not faring well.
Right, yes. And during this time of COVID, you are seeing more adoptions, people wanting more pets, I hear?
Well, it's quite complicated to answer that question. Shelters have not always been good at data collection, but now we have a new tool called Shelter Animals Count, and anyone can go online and look it up. And a lot of shelters across the country are participating. And what that data is showing us is that fewer animals are coming into shelters. Mm-hmm. So adoptions are actually not up. The percentage of animals going out to adoptions is up, but the total number of actual animals being adopted is down because the number of animals coming into the shelters is down right now. Mm-hmm. And what we see in New England is vastly different from other parts of the country. We were on a very good trajectory already to have managed overpopulation. So in 2019, our little shelter, 55% of our dogs came from elsewhere, mostly the South, and 30% of our cats came from elsewhere, either other shelters in Vermont all the way to Florida. So that's a huge amount of animals coming from elsewhere. Our local population of homeless animals is quite small and manageable. And that's why we do transports, because we have the kennel space and we can save lives of places that are still euthanizing just for time and space. And that's something that you have volunteered for and given of your time and expertise for that. And when you could say transport, you're saying bringing animals who would be otherwise euthanized in other shelters or other places. Yeah, so that's what's really interesting. If you go on Shelter Animals Count and look at their data, and they have really fun graphics to look at, in this time of COVID, we went from not having very many animals and doing a lot of transports to having even fewer animals. Right now, I think I have 4 dogs in our kennel because we haven't done a transport in a month or two. And we just did a transport from Florida for cats. But now with COVID cases surging, it's not responsible to be doing transports, as well as my staff is super busy doing medical care, affordable veterinary care. And also the local vets are so busy that people with new pets are having trouble getting appointments. So it doesn't feel right to be bringing more animals to New England with all those issues.
And again, so the Humane Society is pretty full service. You've got a vet on board. You have quite a few staff. Can you talk about your people?
I have the best people. I'm really grateful for them on so many levels, not just because when I go into work, I get re-inspired. I often work from home these days, and sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. But anytime I go down to the shelter, I'm just re-inspired and reanimated. So I have a core staff right now. There's 9 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And big shout out to Carrie Roberts, who has been working at the shelter for 18 years. That's a long time in animal welfare. And
Congratulations.
yeah, she's probably the most empathetic person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's really the rock. Without her, we're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got really fortunate when we decided we could hire a veterinarian. We couldn't do full time, so we share a veterinarian with Monadnock. And so Dr. Martino is at Monadnock 3 days a week and at our shelter 2 days a week. And it's a struggle to find veterinarians, and she couldn't be the more perfect fit for us. I like to call her Dr. MacGyver because she's always figuring out how to make it work with big challenges. And, you know, we are not an emergency vet clinic, but we have dealt with a few emergencies because she finds a way to make it work.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. Yeah. So you also have a pet assistance program.
We have a pet care assistance program. We started with a grant from Banfield in 2011, and we're the first shelter to do that. Following the lead of some national shelters and some really interesting data. As I had said earlier, in New England, overpopulation is not our biggest problem. Affordable veterinary care is. And so I felt like we had to take it on as the main animal welfare issue in our area. So we've been slowly building that program. We hired the vet for the first time in 2019. And when COVID hit, the need just burgeoned. And we are busy, really busy, helping people keep pets in their homes.
Right. But it does sound like you've got dedicated staff. It does sound like you have enough people taking care of things and taking care of the animals.
We do. You know, we're all kind of keeping our fingers on the pulse. There was some concern about evictions, people losing their homes, a lot of surrenders all at once. If we were suddenly to have some kind of influx of animals, we would be pretty short-staffed. The balance right now, without doing transports, we can handle the number of animals coming in as strays and surrenders and also provide this medicine. So we do that 2 days a week. We're pretty full with clinic stuff. And like recently, the town of Brattleboro said, wow, we have a lot of people without rabies vaccine. So we're trying to fill that need. And if anybody makes an appointment for a rabies or distemper vaccine, we're encouraging them to bring in a bag of dry cat or dog food for our pet food pantry. Because, of course, another thing to keep pets in the homes they have is food. Yes,
that's right. And you ended up, going back a little ways, you ended up here in Brattleboro through not a long and winding road, but it was a journey. And you did a lot of things in the natural world, as I mentioned before. Can you give us a little eye view into that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northwest Connecticut in a really lovely rural setting. And my dad was a real outdoorsman, and both my parents gave me a real love of the natural world and of animals. It was Mom that got us ponies and donkeys and cats and dogs and all those things. But it was also my mom that took us to Vermont to Mad River to ski. And that began a lifelong love affair with the state. It's interesting because I love Connecticut, and I find when I go back there that oak hickory forest is what my body recognizes. But Vermont felt more like the Connecticut of my childhood in terms of being less crowded and more rural and lots of dirt roads. So when I left Connecticut Audubon, I actually grabbed the moment to do some adventuring and took a summer volunteer position at the Grand Canyon. But at that time, as I was shifting gears in my life, I knew it was time to finally move to Vermont. So from Arizona, I started looking online and saw that Mary Kay Brass was starting a singing group at the Guiding Star Grange, where I had done a lot of contra dancing. So before I even moved back to Vermont, I had a singing group, and I think I had already applied for the job at Croca. So I had some good things lined up, and I had family up here by that time.
Yeah.
At that point, all my siblings had moved to Vermont or New Hampshire as I was coming back from Arizona.
That's so interesting. Those are formatory years then as kids, being outside and coming up here. And Mad River is a little bit different than other ski areas. There's a big challenge to Mad River.
Well, I think also it has that quirky, we're not going to make snow and we're not going to put in a big chairlift.
Right.
Yeah, we still love it. And my brother's, a part owner, like many people.
Yeah. They're the cowboys of the ski scene, right?
Exactly.
So I know that you did, when you were, I think, working for Audubon and national parks, you were outside a lot, but you also got some administration chops somewhere along the line as well.
Yeah. So I had gone to Antioch and got a master's in science teaching, and that led to my first experience with the parks, which was an internship at Yosemite. And, at that time, if I didn't have a degree to finish, I might have stayed in the West. But I came back to finish my degree, and I tried teaching in the classroom. I didn't love it. And it was a really great little program where we taught kids outdoors all fall and all spring. And in the winter, we went into the classrooms. Like I had a box of skulls and I would go in and teach about the differences between predators and whatever. Yeah. So I really taught outdoors for about 6 years, but that did morph into an administrative position with a nonprofit that eventually I was not so much in the field and teaching, but although I got to still lead hikes and stuff like that. But that's where I got my nonprofit administration experience.
Yeah, so that's a balance of two things that obviously served you well coming to the Humane Society too. And I've been wondering during this pandemic time about classrooms in general, and that idea, as you describe, of a mix of being outside and inside just sounds so healthy.
I know part of me felt with the pandemic, like, let's just shut the schools down and find outdoor service projects for all these children to do. You're cleaning up the roads, studying the forest.
Right.
Yeah. And I know in Antioch, I learned of some amazing programs in like the Netherlands where they put kids in snowsuits and you're outside all day.
Wow.
Great stuff.
So, okay, contra dancing and singing. You've had music in your life for most of your life?
Yeah, my mother was a big fan of classical music. My dad was a country music, Hank Snow kind of guy, but he kind of left that behind in his youth. He wasn't but he loved, I always picture him at Christmas listening to the Messiah. So, and then my oldest sister is actually trained in voice, and I've always loved to sing and learned to love to dance from an AFS sister from France. And it pretty soon became a great love, the community and the music. I mean, the most amazing live music for, $10 a dance, the physicality, the exercise, just love it.
Yes. And that is not happening these days.
No, it'll be a while before
it will be a while. And the Hallowell singers that you've been attached to for a number of years now, and also Mary Kay Brass. So let's hear about that whole world.
Yeah, so when I had already loved contra dancing before I went out to the Grand Canyon, and as I said, I was online checking out what was going to be at the Guiding Star Grange when I got home and saw Mary Kay was starting up Greenfield Harmony, so I joined that group, and that's world music. I love that. And it actually led to a trip to Bosnia with Village Harmony with Mary Kay leading. Because I was singing with Mary Kay and the repertoire is very similar to, or a lot of it got transferred over to Hallowell, and Mary Kay is one of our musical directors along with the fabulous Peter Amanon. So I was a candidate to join Hallowell because I knew a lot of the material. Mm-hmm. And I signed up right away because much as I love singing, I don't really like performing. And singing in hospice is not about performance. It's about quietly coming into the room, offering the gift of music, and quietly going out. And that's perfect for me.
Yeah. And I wonder, Annie, if you could talk a little bit more about that, because I know that there's a lot that goes into training to being a hospice singer, and a lot that you find out about yourself and about what it is like to be able to bring that to someone else and to a family.
Yeah, that's been amazing. And I'll try to do this without crying, Wendy. So there is that piece of learning about how it's not a performance, and you can't go in thinking about, am I doing this, beautifully, well, you do have to think about, it's a gift, and you don't want to be off key or messing the song up, but it's also not about, hey, look how great I'm singing, look at me. So you have to learn that. You also have to learn, really trust your leaders. In each sing, we have someone who's the alliance between us and the family, right, so that we're not all trying to speak to someone who might be deep in the middle of grieving, but there's one connection there. And then we have a musical leader who's picking the songs, and it's not about us, oh, I want to do this one. I have total faith in everybody that gets put in those positions. And I love that. Both in my job, I have to be a leader and a follower. And I learned in contra dancing to both lead and follow. They're two really different things, and you need both of them. And so I love going into the room and having total faith in my two leaders. All I have to do is sing as beautifully as I can with everybody else in the room. And it's, it's a little, we don't talk about it a lot in society, about people dying. And it's been a great, great gift to be present as people are on that journey and to be ready for that. That's just been transformative in my life in so many ways. And when my mom passed a couple of years ago, we and my siblings spent a whole week, and I think we were all ready for that. It was such a beautiful way to say goodbye we were literally there for a full week. I just left everything behind and immersed myself in that. And Hallowell deeply prepared me for that. And they also came and sang at her memorial service.
Yes, and I think that that you've spoken to the space of preparation, the space of showing up. And then afterwards, you're walking away from that experience. What's that like for you?
Oh, it's can be really amazing. We always we leave the home and we gather and we check in with everybody. And it's always different. Some sings make you feel uplifted. We're not always singing for someone deep on the journey. Sometimes they're wide awake and very present and want some joyful, fun songs. Sometimes you're very close. I'll hear that the person died the next day, or I had one weekend where we did 3 sings in a row, and everybody passed within the next 24 hours. Very, very powerful. And the other thing that was really interesting that I had to get good at, which has been really helpful, if you go on a sing, it's often you get a phone call, are you available at 2 today? And with my job, I have some flexibility. And I sometimes you get in the car and you've got the news on and, you've got all that clutter, and you have to learn, turn it all off, start breathing now, start calming everything down, so that you walk into the room ready to be present.
Yeah. It's a real practice. Yeah.
Real practice, and it's a gift every time. And our Hallowell rehearsals, which used to be once a month, and I'm missing them very much, are basically my church, because the way we talk about life and death, it's very authentic and very present, and it grounds me.
In everything that you're doing, you're looking after the welfare of someone or something or a group. And that's a very interesting point of view, perspective, and activity as well.
Both my parents were very philanthropically minded, and not just in terms of giving money to places, but in doing your part in your community. My mom was League of Women Voters and Community Services. My dad was an attorney, and he did a lot of pro bono work for people in need. It was definitely a theme from my childhood that you need to step up and do your part in your community. And I also work hard at self-care. I really don't believe in being a martyr to the cause, because then you burn out and you are no longer any help. So balancing those two things is a good practice.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we appreciate all that you're doing. Every single thing that you're doing, it really adds so much to the community, knowing the Humane Society is alive and well, and knowing that you and other people are doing bedside singing, knowing that you're helping people find their way in nature, however that is. So thanks for being on today.
Well, thanks for having me. It was very fun.
Yeah, it was great to have you on, Annie. And we will be hearing more from the Humane Society as the days go on. I'm sure that you will have some fundraising things going on as well. So people could stay tuned for that. Information for the Humane Society will be at the end of the show. So folks can take a look at that. Thanks, Annie.
Thank you, Wendy. It's really great. And can I add, yes, we will be fundraising all of December. We're looking at a very quiet winter, and we want to go into 2021 strong and with our coffers full so we can help as many people and animals as possible.
Well, that's great to know. And I'm sure we'll be seeing that in the papers as well, and you will be doing different advertising about that. Great. Yes, we want to keep that strong and healthy. Thanks.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks to all of you for tuning in today. It was great to have you with us and to hear about another facet of our community and people who are doing great things and keeping things going. We are a weekly show. We have folks from all different parts of the community coming on to talk about what they do and who they are. So we are always happy when you stay tuned, and we're glad to have you with us. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.